Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. I spoke earlier today, and I publicly declared that procurement is not the problem when it comes to government tech. I think I'm going to be proven wrong, maybe, right now. But while it might not be the thing to blame, there's opportunity for it to get better. So we're going to hear from some great people who have experienced the procurement side from the vendor perspective. And they're going to tell you a little bit about the work that they've done, and then we're going to have a conversation and take some questions, I think. So first up, we have Kurtis McBride, who's the CEO and co-founder of MyoVision, a technology company that provides cities with the data and tools they need to reduce traffic congestion, make better urban planning decisions, and improve safety on the roads. Under Kurtis's leadership, MyoVision has provided the data and insights to improve traffic flow in more than 13,000 municipalities worldwide. He holds a Master's of Engineering in Systems Design with the University of Waterloo. I have personally skirted procurement processes with him, and it was a lot of fun. So I look forward to hearing what he has to say. Please welcome Kurtis.
I wasn't going to tell that story about procurement rules, but so yeah, I actually would agree that procurement is not the problem, but I do think that there's opportunities in procurement. So I'm gonna talk through. I'm gonna start off, just give you guys the 30-second MyoVision commercial, just so you know what we do. So this is downtown Toronto. This is actually the project that Suri talked about. So we help cities to collect information from the roadside. So how many cars, buses, pedestrians, cyclists are going through the network? How are they interacting with each other? And then we turn that into information that helps them understand how the network is performing. So this is one example of an output that we generate with cities. This is called a split failure analysis. Red's bad, green's good. Red basically means if you've ever been waiting to turn left and you've had to wait a second cycle before you could get through the intersection, all had that happen to us, that would show up as a red bar in a slice of time. And so we build tools that help basically take data that we generate sort of at a granular level from an intersection, turn that into graphs like this, and then provide tools that cities can use to try to make less red and more green in the intersection network. So that's some context. We've been at this 15 years. We have probably close to 1,000 public sector customers all over the world. So we have lots of experience with procurement, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to talk today about two specific examples where I think there's opportunities to do procurement slightly different. And it isn't to say that we're doing procurement wrong, but I think that there's opportunities to do things differently and get better outcomes. So the first one I want to talk about is the link between procurement and the technology architecture, right? So one of the things that is happening a lot of these days is this whole world of IoT, right? Cities are buying things that are sensors basically that go at the side of the road. Those sensors are connected in some way. It could be a wireless network, for example, and they're connected to an application. And the application is where the city derives ROI. The way cities procure is that this is often a line manager level procurement, right? So I want to make traffic better. I want to improve something about how I manage water in the city, how I manage public safety, and I have a particular objective, and I procure a thing, right, a product that measures something at the edge, like out in the real world, moves that data into the application layer where I get my ROI. Generally, how I think about procurement is I'm responsible for generating that ROI, and that's kind of where it ends for me, right? So the problem is that lends itself to vendors who want to basically provide vendor lock-in. So they use closed architectures to ensure that you have to buy again and again and again from the same vendor. And because the way the ROI is sort of focused at the city, purchased at the line manager level, no one's thinking about buying something that could ensure that data is open and could get connected to other things. And so there's this lost opportunity where data that was purchased for one particular use case can be combined with data that was procured for a different particular use case and create another ROI, right? So 1 + 1 = 3. So one thing that we talk a lot about with customers is if you procure open, even though you really only care about that initial ROI that you're trying to drive, if you procure in a way that ensures the data is open and can be shared, now all of a sudden other departments in the city, third parties outside the city can access this information in easier ways, and you can get those future ROI benefits that you might not have thought about when you first set out to buy the thing. Montreal is a great example of a city that's actually implemented this as a policy across the city. So all systems that they buy have to be procured using products that are open architecture. The challenge Montreal's run into is that the vendor ecosystem is generally not that way. So by making that rule, they've made it really hard to buy things. So the more cities sort of pile on into that, the easier it will be for places like Montreal to do that, because more vendors will be forced to move in that direction. So that's sort of one thought that I have that in the panel maybe we can get into more. The other one I want to talk about is using procurement as an economic growth driver, and this is true certainly at cities, but I think at federal and provincial levels where we can sort of really shape policy. So I'm going to talk about two ways that governments spend money. So one way is they download through provinces to municipalities to enable municipalities to buy things. So I want to make traffic better, I take some money and I buy something to make traffic better. The other way that governments spend money is they invest in basically OpEx grants for companies, right? So whether it's like FedDev, SHRED, IRAP, IBI, there's all these different programs that companies like MyVision can get that essentially help us to fund innovation. So government will give me 50 cents on the dollar to hire software developers to build products for customers, okay? So the way we approach procurement, and in the case of this example, sort of granting, is these are like two separate processes that we run, right? Money to buy things, money to fund research. One of the models that I've seen in the US used a lot and to a great degree of effect is instead of giving companies money to fund R&D, they give money to the customers to buy R&D, right? So the same dollar that would otherwise have gone to me goes to the customer, and then the customer can actually buy innovation from me, right? So what that does is instead of flowing in as an OpEx grant, which things like my investors, the capital markets, they don't really care if I got a free dollar from the government. It doesn't really help me at all. It helps me that I have a dollar, but it doesn't really help me drive my business. If it flows in as revenue, I'm learning something from the customer. The customer is actually getting a benefit that they wouldn't otherwise get because they didn't have that dollar before. And the capital markets look at that and get all excited because they see revenue growth. So this is an example of, again, where we can be more strategic about procurement, and we can actually create, in the case of MyVision, a better traffic outcome, and we can create revenue for an innovator as opposed to just these OpEx grants, which drives capital markets and scales up companies, driving not only better traffic but better economic outcome. In the minute or two I have left here, I want to give you a specific example of that, because that last example is a bit esoteric, it's kind of abstract. So Canada signs up to the Paris Accord. We say we're going to reduce greenhouse gases over the next so many years. Current models suggest we're going to miss that target by a fair margin. We have data that suggests that if you go back to that initial graph I showed, trying to turn red bars into green bars, if you optimized every intersection in the country, it's about 35,000 of them, tomorrow, it would cut that gap that we have by about a factor of a third. Right? So we can't get all the way there, but we can make a pretty big dent in our Paris commitments just by not having to wait at green lights, red lights anymore. So if you imagine sort of applying this procurement principle, stop giving MyVision money through programs like Supercluster, like the Strategic Innovation Fund, give the money to my customers, allow them to actually optimize traffic flow through procurement, which maybe will happen with MyVision, maybe won't. But that this would sort of drive market creation, create outcomes that we care about as a country, but we got to get more strategic about procurement. So yeah, moral of the story, fund my customers. Thanks. Whoop.
Okay, next up we have Luke De Coste, the Chief Governance Officer and co-founder of Proof. Luke specializes in using entrepreneurship to propel a data-driven public sector. For the last 3 years, he's done that by digitizing tens of thousands of decisions and by co-founding proofgov.com, one of Canada's leading tech startups. The venture-backed community, which is an alumni of top global accelerators like Techstars and Creative Destruction Lab, is at the frontier of government digitization in Canada, and he's going to tell you a little bit about what he's been up to.
That guy sounds way more impressive than I feel sometimes. I have a disappearing beard trick. I usually have some anxiety before presentations. Fortunately, now I just have anxiety about coronavirus, so that's great. So we're Proof, we're former public servants and have also built Silicon Valley startups and are trying to disrupt government. We've, over the last 4 years, have had over 4,000 conversations with the public sector about how we could help with digitization. Why does procurement matter? We want great software and we want it easily. I see procurement as a border crossing. You want to get across as fast as you can. You don't want to take extra money and you don't want to take any security problems. How many people here have struggled to get across the border, the metaphorical border? Yeah, you're not alone. We've heard about this all across the country, and we've actually baked it into our product offering. So we call ourselves the SpaceX of government software. SpaceX brings their costs down to 1/10 by reusing the rockets. We're reusing the code base, which typically doesn't happen in government. It's often we're going to build our own custom solution, and so we've been able to do this. This is a famous startup book about how hard it is to start a startup. Well, try doing it in the public sector space. You have a whole lot more hard things to deal with. The good news is it's working. We are reusing the rockets. We've digitized now 60,000 decisions across the country where we can go in, show the demo, and people go like, oh, you very much get my problem because you're solving it in many other jurisdictions. And after you get 10 intercom messages from one jurisdiction that it's not working well, you fix it. And then so in the next demo, you don't have that problem. We see this procurement problem in our data of our software. Simple things like getting approval to go spend $1,000 on a hotel is about 13 steps, and then another 12 to get reimbursed for it. So you can imagine the pain of an $80 million ERP procurement. So I'm going to quickly run you through like 6 or 7 examples of what we've encountered from a procurement perspective, and then wrap it up with some lessons. This was, Ryan Andersoft shared a slide about the CDS being announced in a budget. This was about a week before that, where we had a one-page proposal and a 2-day sales cycle. This was an example of somebody not looking in the trunk as the car went across the border. Now, fortunately, we had a lot of trust in that relationship, and it worked out well. We built them something that they're still using to this day. It was one of our first customers. This is, what I'm showing is basically we did a bunch of agile procurement, but we didn't know we were doing agile procurement. So in this case, this was an economic development grant. A government was like, hey, we think we need a CRM. We'll give you some money to see if we build it. And so it was very quick because we weren't going through an IT procurement process. And what was great about that is we found out that there wasn't really a user pain there. Like the CRM wasn't a solution they needed, but we saved ourselves a bunch of hassle by just doing a quick grant, talking to users, launching a prototype, and it not going anywhere. And I'll talk later about our relationship with that government. This is these special innovation programs, BCIP, where we submitted a 127-row application only to find out later when Alex Binet lobbied on our behalf that they had lost our application, which was ironic because we do approval management software. We've applied to things like Startup in Residence a couple of times. Both times, the proponent of the program actually pulled back the challenge, so we're looking forward to those being more effective. Here's another example where a province had put out a procurement and nobody responded to it. As a result, they were able to do a sole source. It gave them an exception. So this was a great way that we were able to get in, work closely with them on a project. This is, I think, the biggest procurement problem that new companies face in government. And it's the pathway when you walk in with software, they say, well, can any of our existing vendors do it? Well, when your existing vendors have $1 trillion market cap, of course they can do it. What you also need to ask is, do they do it as well? Do they do it as cheaply? Do they do it as quickly? So in this case, we went in as IT labor with actually a product, but spent 12 months arguing with IT about how we were different than SharePoint. And that problem went away when we integrated in with SharePoint and they stopped asking that question, but it was a great learning for us. this is another example of like, we just want to get in, we just want to get users using our product. We weren't on the pro services list, so we found a third party that we subcontracted to. This deal closed on like March 20th, as most of our deals do. And we went in, we built a bunch of prototypes for them and are continuing to work with that department to this day. This is an exciting new opportunity for us where we've been pitching this idea like, hey, we're ready to go. You're in the middle of a massive IT transformation that's going to take you 5 years. They're doing an SAP transformation. Why don't you use Proof in the meantime? And that's what we're doing here. We're going to digitize a bunch of their approvals out of the gate while they figure out what a $10, $20, $30 million IT implementation looks like. But this is the best one of all for us, and it's that same customer that in the economic development grant I talked about. We went back in and started doing approval management for them, and that has become our core product where they said, okay, do one pilot with us. That was working well. So then the central IT said, oh, we actually want that tool as well. So we expanded to 2 departments. They said, we'll give you 3 if you build a SharePoint integration. So we did that, and that's the way that this has been going. They require us to build some stuff on the product roadmap, and they allow us to expand into more departments. And that one has been great for us, and it acts as the base of the flywheel. So we learn a lot with that government, and then we go to other governments around the country and say, this is what we're learning and the value proposition we're giving. So I'm going to boil down all the lessons in a common startup framework. This is the pirate metrics. Kurtis maybe has heard of them before, where it's R down the left-hand side. So the first step, thinking about procurement innovation, is that acquisition. How does the customer actually get to learn about you? For us, it's just cold calling people and say warm introductions, trying to learn what government's problems are. But currently, there's like, don't talk to me. That you need to get on the lobbyist registry to do that. There's a few uncertainties there around like limiting the term of your SaaS contract. Don't make it a 10-year contract, because then all of a sudden the pilot price goes so up that you can't sole source it, and then you're into a multi-year procurement process. The IP rights is an interesting one. We would go open source tomorrow if someone can show me a path to get into more government departments by going open source. So it's something we're actively exploring. We hear a lot of talk about it, and we're trying to figure out what's the proof in the pudding there. Activation, this is the biggest challenge for us as a vendor, is we can sign a contract, we can get the money, that's easily solved, but then we get into this how do you get running process. And one of the big challenges is, oh, well, can one of the existing vendors do it? There's not a lot of certainty around what the security process is. It would be great if the community solidified around SOC or ISO or something so that you could get it once and then you're not filling out this random checkbox from an IT department. Retention, so if the pilot goes well, there should be some path to be able to continue on and don't do all these learnings and then just let them die on the vine. Revenue is getting, the path I'm talking about here is kind of a capital strategy for building a startup in government. We figured out all these things, and now we have the credibility to win actual RFPs, which is great for us. And then referral is, once you pass all those boxes with one department, is having a path to be able to deploy into other departments so that the learnings that one department really worked through in a difficult way is able to share with other departments. So that's what we're up to, and those are some of the learnings as we go. Any questions? I'll be around. Thanks.